Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
It's
Thanks for having me.
really nice to see you and to actually get to do this in person.
Yes, I'm excited.
I got to tell you, so I saw you, I sent you a note after I saw you at the Marquee that night after Classified's Scotiabank.
Yes.
And I was like, I had heard your stuff. I had seen your videos. I knew you were around. I knew of you. I was excited about your music and everything else. And then I saw that show and I was like, wow. Seriously, like musically, it was awesome. But it was like the whole presence on stage. It felt like you were born to be on the stage. Like I was so amazed with the party you were throwing, the joy that you were bringing to the audience, and also the confidence that you had on stage. Like it just felt so mature. So have you been doing this your whole life? Okay.
Yes.
There we go. Okay. Let's get into it.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, David, for your kind words and all these is what we hope for as artists, right? It's the best feedback we could ever get. But I've been singing in church for a very long time. And my mom used to do this thing where she'd be like, okay, so if church asked me to like announce the hymn on Saturday, I went to church on Saturday. She'd be like, so stand over there and just like do it like 5 times.
Really?
Yeah, so she kind of prepared me for that. And I was really super active in church, really super active in school. I did debating and public speaking. So I got more relaxed and familiar with standing in front of an audience. Now the musical part is something way more mysterious and more like divine, if for want of a better word. My dad was a musician, well is a musician, and a really, really well accomplished one. Really proud of him, and we share this insane love for music. Not just me and him, but my other 7 siblings.
7 siblings.
Yes, my dad has.
And where do you fit in the line?
Okay, so I am number 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm number.
You're the youngest.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, so I should say 8 siblings because I'm number 8 of 9.
Wow.
On my dad's side.
That's so cool.
And number 1 of 2 on
wow.
my mom's side.
Okay, so you're connected to so many people. That's incredible.
And they're all musical.
No, they're not. Wow.
Yes, they are.
And so what does your dad play?
My dad plays guitar.
Okay.
And he was blessed enough to start playing with Bob Marley and the Wailers when he was 17 years old.
So wait, what years was this? What year?
I can't remember the year off the top of my head, but that's when he was 17.
That's crazy. And Bob Marley died in 1981, right?
Exactly, before I was born.
Wow, okay. Yeah. He was 17?
When he started
playing. Did he
playing.
tour with them and stuff?
Oh, of course. And then ended up doing a lot of work with the Marleys after Bob Marley passed, and even expanded his repertoire to contribute to records like Amy Winehouse, Frank, Joss Stone's Grammy Award-winning reggae album. My dad's on there. Erykah Badu, Lauryn Hill, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
What?
Yeah, I'm really, really proud of him, and not to mention.
And he was based in Jamaica the whole time.
Right, he's right there now, maybe having a joint on his veranda.
That's pretty
Hi, Daddy.
That's pretty amazing. That is crazy. So from the time he was 17, he's been playing on all these massive recordings, and you grew up with this. So he'd already started. By the time you were born, he was well into an established music career.
I want to say when myself and my brother were born in 88, he was at maybe one of the highest points in his career at that point. And whenever I went to his house, it would be all of him and all of his musical friends. There would always be jamming. And so being around music in that way, I didn't understand what a great front seat vision I had or visual I had of these things going on. But I was really grateful now that I'm an adult, really, really grateful for these experiences.
It's so interesting how many people, it's like a different type of education. There's education that you can get by going to school, obviously, which is really great. And in church, it's amazing how many musicians I've interviewed who've said, that's how I got my start. That's how I got used to singing in public. That's what gave me the confidence when I was just a little kid and everybody cheers you on. There's a real spirit of encouragement, and music is alive in the church. But then there's this whole home thing where it's just sinking in.
Oh, everything.
Like I think about Cape Breton a lot, Yes. I grew up with a lot of music in my house, but it is different when you run it. They talk about kitchen parties here all the time, and not everybody actually has kitchen parties where they play. Like it's a thing that's been built up in the Maritimes. But
Okay.
in Cape Breton, it actually happens.
Real.
You know what I mean? You know, the Dunn family,
Oh,
they do
yes.
it. Right? Like it's just families that just all play. That's a different way to learn.
Can I tell you about my first Christmas with the Dunn family?
You please do, yeah.
I hadn't met a whole bunch of them yet. Just most of them that are living in Halifax, maybe 2 or 3 of them, you know, and it's a massive family and they're all musical and they're all incredibly talented. So there I am on Christmas and they have Leb night because they have Lebanese roots. And then Kim Dunn goes to the piano, and without saying anything, everyone gathers around. And I remember saying to myself, if I couldn't sing or have any musical capability, I would feel so out of place right now. And it's great because that's been one of the really big connections between me and that family, is the music.
From day one.
From day one till now.
I mean, it speaks to what music is so special, like why it is so special. It connects people beyond. Like, and that was your way. It was also the opposite of that, being that if you didn't know music, we wouldn't know how to get in there. But you did know music, and it was probably immediate, right? People were probably like, oh, wow, right? Like, this is pretty amazing.
You get some smiles, some like really nice approving smiles from them, and you're like, you're in.
Right on. Kim is one of the most gifted musicians I've ever witnessed.
Tell me about it.
He can play everything. He's got such a beautiful voice.
Incredible.
He looks like Harrison Ford.
He does.
He's just like, I find he's got this beautiful low baritone voice, but then he has access to this perfect falsetto.
Beautiful. And then let's talk about his presence and the ease of which he just like his charisma is that's the word I'm looking for.
I know.
And Paul Dunn too, my father-in-law, like had that same special spark of just
I never knew
wonderfulness.
Paul. And I knew, obviously I know Kim well. And I remember when he was making the project and was talking about how special it was.
Incredible. I love those guys so much, and I will never stop loving them.
Oh, that's so amazing. That's such an interesting thing. So let's go back to Jamaica a little bit.
Yeah.
So you're growing up in this. Did you start like singing with your dad? Were you singing in bands? Was it backup singing? Was it lead? Was it, what was your experience with you as a performer in Jamaica?
I'm going to say something really funny. I feel like I was my dad's favorite little jukebox.
Okay.
He's like, oh, so there's this cool song, because he knows I'm going to be really super interested. He's like, we should learn it. And then we'd sit on his veranda and we'd listen to the song 20 times and we'd repeat. And then we just developed a repertoire of songs that right now, if my dad is in this room, we wouldn't have to rehearse.
Yeah.
So I wasn't playing for anyone. He wasn't trying to put me out on stages. Actually, quite the opposite. When I went on my first tour at 21 with the Wailers, right?
Well, you toured with the Wailers at 21?
I did. Aston Family Man Barrett. First time I flew out of Jamaica.
Wow.
I couldn't tell him because he didn't want me to go. And I remember being in Hollywood, LA, not LA, Hollywood, California, not the big Hollywood. There's another one that has a racetrack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was there and he called and he's like, I hear you're there. And you didn't tell me. And I was like, no, if I told you, you wouldn't have let me go. And
why wouldn't he have let you go? What was it?
He I just don't believe he felt like I was at the age where I could be out there with all the men and be out there with all the, you know.
Yeah.
It gets crazy on tour sometimes.
Of course.
But he
and you're his daughter, and of course he'd be nervous. Of course,
exactly.
You're going to see in the world with one of the biggest reggae bands of all time.
No. So he entrusted me into the care of Aston Barrett, and I felt more comfortable after that. But I felt like I couldn't tell him I was going to go because he was going to be like, no, you're not ready.
Wow. Did you have a sense that these were some of the finest musicians in the world? Being from, like, did you have you're in Jamaica, you have a sense that they're some of the greatest on the island. But did you have a sense that the world these are world renowned musicians?
They are.
Musicians.
No, I did
Family
not.
Man Barrett's like anybody who listens to records knows.
No, I did not. And I'll tell you one of the things. I grew up in the countryside with my mother, and I went to an all-girls boarding school.
Okay. And
my dad was a traveling musician. Yeah. And he's like, okay. And I have 8 other siblings. I was like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I used to be, this is the time of Beyonce and BT and rap music and hip hop and R&B. And my dad would just look so different. Like at that time, I didn't understand and appreciate my culture as much as I do now. Like, if you would visit me, I'd be like, oh, my dad looks a little different from everyone else's dad.
Right.
But then when you start to appreciate the decision they've made to stand out, the decision they've made to be unapologetically themselves, the decision they've made to embrace their Africanism and embrace their Blackness and embrace the music that they have all had hands in developing and bringing to the world, I am overfilled with joy. And now has been my life mission. It's like, you'll never see me out there trying to, twerk or trying to be something I'm not.
Yeah.
Spreading my culture is my mission. If I'm asked to be anything else other than what I am, I know not to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's what what you're doing, how to do it. But what about all that other stuff that you grew up with that you still feel connected to, that Beyonce stuff, you still don't feel like that's the music that you want to pursue in the full?
Yeah. Well, music is universal, and I love all genres of music.
Yeah.
I think it's the messaging and the way I show up and present myself, that because a lot of people right now, the music industry is being overrun with imagery and not so much musical substance.
Yeah.
And I love every kind of sort of creativity. However, I want the focus to be on the creativity and not how I look.
Yeah.
Especially as a woman, So that's one of the things that I really stand up for. I want to show up as myself, and in my music and in my art. And if you don't like that and it's not for you, then that's okay. But I am not going to try to change myself so that I'll be more palatable.
Yeah. Well, you can't. So many of these conversations are about sustaining long careers. Being able to withstand not a first decade, but a second decade, a third decade of music, which you saw your father do. You can't do that by faking it. You can do it for a few years. Yeah. Sometimes people find a lot of success. I've talked to this with a lot of different people, this idea of like, it actually becomes a burden. Yeah. A heavy burden, too heavy a burden to bear. Yeah. If it isn't you. If you find success not being you, you know what I mean? Because you can't sustain it, because then you're acting. You want to find success on your own terms, because then you can do it every night.
Every day.
It's who you are.
And then
it took
joy.
me a long time to figure that out myself, because you're testing a lot. When you're a young artist, you're testing a lot of different avenues, and I love all different music. I listen to all sorts of stuff. I grew up, I listened to tons of jazz. I listened to funk music. And then I listened to a little. I got an acoustic guitar, and I thought, well, maybe I need to be a singer-songwriter. And then I was always jumping around. And then if something starts to work, you start to go, oh, maybe I should do that more. Which can be a really bad, it can actually, sometimes, as they say, success can be actually more dangerous than failure, because you can end up faking it. You end up just chasing the thing that was successful the first time.
Absolutely.
So I've always tried to be really careful of that, because of obvious, and I've talked with so many different artists, the same idea of like, how do you stay true? How do you remind yourself what are the fundamentals of what make you, Exactly.
And some of the points you're saying there resonate so well with me. It's like, as you said, it's filling that gap between what you think people want and the joy of just being yourself, and just like closing that gap.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, because you'll never know. That's the thing. You'll never know what people really want. Yeah. You can guess. We're at a music conference right now. Everybody's trying to guess, right? What the next thing is. Yeah. That's what the industry's about. They're trying to guess. This looks cool. This is cool. But we're trying to figure out what it is that our soul's telling us.
Exactly. And you know what the truth is? The truth is that's what the people want.
Yes. Yeah.
I was talking to someone this morning, and they said that when you are in your authenticity, whatever sort of creative outlet you have, but you're standing there in your authenticity, feeling your feelings, however complex they are, this is what gives the audience permission to feel their own. Yeah. They want someone to help them, to trigger them, to be like, it's okay. That's right. I'm validated in feeling my feelings. Yeah. And so they look to creatives, they look to artists, they look to even poets, they look to people like that to be able to give them that permission to feel their own feelings,
even if they're not the same feelings.
I
think that this is what we've done, this thing where people, I think, feel like validation comes in the form of similar feelings, or looking similar, or being similar, or having similar views on the world. It's not like that.
No.
If you're not open to having feelings enter you from a variety of sources, because you never know what's going to move you.
That's true.
You know what I mean? You never know. I think more and more we tend to limit ourselves. Well, no, this is the type of music. This is who you are and you listen to. We're always really interested in that. Limiting people's perspective, limiting what people do. It's because online we're limited. Everybody's limited to these bylines. I am this, and this.
These labels.
But we're all way more complicated than that.
Totally.
And when you see someone who's had a completely different upbringing from a different place, and then they say something that is true, it's when you realize the universals, the big stuff. It's like, I feel that too, or this reminds me of this feeling that I have, and we have a completely different experience. We came to this same feeling from completely different places.
Yeah.
Which is way more powerful.
Oh, yes.
Right? You know what I mean? It's like that's where the magic is. But it doesn't happen until you're not afraid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I noticed when I watched you play. So I was like, no, she knows who she is. That's hard. That takes a long time. But you see it, you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
And the audience is put at ease.
Yeah.
It's a different energy. It's like it's just a different energy. I was amazed by that right away. And I see that in most of the artists that I really respect.
Yeah.
But it's about a self-assuredness and openness.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how you say that. Like, that's what validates other people's feelings. It's all connection.
Yeah.
It's all connection.
Yeah.
And so what did you see in when you were touring with those artists as a young person?
Yeah.
When was it that you turned and kind of went, no, this culture's amazing.
This is it.
Like when you turned when you looked at your own culture as you started to travel around the world and go, wait, this is amazing. This is what I want to represent.
Yes.
When did that happen?
I landed in Atlanta, Georgia to play with the Wailers without any rehearsal in June of 2010. And when I landed there was a limousine outside, and we did our first show, a festival in Atlanta, and at the end of the show, I signed my first autograph as a 21-year-old person who took a bus to the airport. I was like, this is insane, because you have to remember that pop music culture dominates even the airwaves of third world countries. You have little tiny Jamaica with this massive impact. But even Jamaicans who haven't traveled have no idea what the impact is of reggae music and the culture until they've traveled.
That's what I wondered.
Oh, wow. David, you have no idea. Scores and scores of people each night, they all have a story about how reggae music has touched them in equal ways that we've discussed so far, validating them or helping them at a point in their life to move from a less desirable place in their life to a more clear, spot. And just like everyone wants to share. And it's not like certain genres of music that encourage partying and beer and booze and, reggae music revolves around love and unity and good vibrations, Irie, a uniquely Jamaican word that's like, feel good music. And that day, my life changed because, of course, I knew reggae music. I knew all the people making it, but I did not see how it was received until I went on tour. And I've only ever seen this on tour because in Jamaica, reggae music does not get the respect it gets that when it's abroad.
Wow.
People love reggae music. It's like it's ours, but it's almost like, let's talk a little bit. So you have like a spot in Cape Breton or something that's like really, for example, really popular. But if you're a Cape Bretoner, you're like, oh, it's a spot I see all the time.
Yeah.
And then if I come from the U.S. or from another country, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's
what is special
similar.
about it kind of starts to wear off if you're around it all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it's interesting for you to just to talk about reggae like that because to me, it's like it's kind of the universal spiritual music that we have in the world.
Yes.
It's probably the most agreed upon. Spiritual music is where we go to hear spiritual music.
Absolutely.
People have Christian music. There's Islamic music. Everybody, different religions. Reggae has this such a universal message, being based in a spiritual tradition, but a universal message that almost everybody gets behind it. It's exactly its core message is inclusion, not exclusion.
No.
And so I had this experience. I had a very profound reggae experience because I loved reggae. I grew up, I was obsessed with Bob Marley, like many Canadian teenagers who was surrounded, in Fredericton, right? Like, I mean, it was just like this amazing music that sounded incredible to me. I knew very little about Jamaica, but I loved the groove, loved the playing, and I'm a horn player, so I loved everything, But then I moved to China, and I lived in China for a year, and I studied Chinese. I was an exchange student there.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience.
Yeah.
But it was hard. It was a hard place to live for any foreigner. It was just one of those places because we were in a place where there weren't that many foreigners. Exactly. And so we all kind of congregated. Well, where did we congregate? The Reggae Bar. It was called Reggae Bar.
Yes.
And what did they play? Only reggae. All the time. And you had, and I'm not, it wasn't Americans, it was people from all over the African continent, all over the Middle East, all over South America, and very international. This was not international as in just a bunch of Americans, and which is fine. This was a different thing. This was a Chinese exchange student. There was people from everywhere, and what united us was reggae. It was unbelievable, and we could go there on a Friday or Saturday night, and all of a sudden it's me from Fredericton dancing with people from Nigeria, from the Congo, and what's bringing us together is the message of one love. And I'm like, if this isn't what this music's supposed to do, there wasn't any other music in the world that you could have put on that jukebox that would have united the people.
That effect.
Right?
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that. I'm getting goosebumps.
Well, it is. It's like this. It serves our spirituality, our yearning.
Yep.
We have a yearning.
Yep.
We want to be unified.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nonpartisan. It's almost like as you said, everyone's welcome. Everyone's welcome. Into the One Love party of reggae music.
It's amazing. And so by traveling is when you realize that people were genuinely moved by the music.
You better believe it. Mm-hmm. And then several years later, I started to really dig into the faith of the Rastafarian culture. And you see, the Rastafarian culture, they'll never call it a religion. It's a way of life, because the institution of organized religions and that sort of thing kind of goes against. A lot of them have such corrupt histories and all that stuff, that the reggae and the Rastafarian message is just one love. And some of it is steeped in the Bible. Mm-hmm. But there are 3 different mansions of Rastafarian culture, and they all share the belief that His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie, whose name is Tafari Makonnen, is a prophet of sorts, and that he was sent to the world here to help liberate the black people in a time when we were probably in the West under the most oppressive situations. Right. Yeah.
So, but there is a spiritual core that's also tied to the biblical tradition as well. Of course,
especially the 12 tribes. So the 3 different mansions of Rastafarian culture are the 12 tribes of Israel, who are steeped in the Abrahamic covenant, the 12 tribes of Judah, and then the 12 tribes of Israel. Yeah. Yeah, from Jacob and all that. And then the other 2 do not subscribe to the Bible at all. Okay. It's just purely Pan-Africanism and Black liberation and unity and love and peace, equal rights and justice.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
And one love.
It's so powerful. So how did you reconcile your growing up in the traditional church, because you grew up in a Christian church?
I did.
And then became more interested in Rastafarianism.
It was really a tough decision for me. And it happened to me at a time when I was probably at the lowest in my life. My mother had just moved here to Halifax, Nova Scotia. And in some ways, I kind of felt alone there in the world. Not alone, because I had all my friends and family. But when your mom leaves, there's something about when your mom goes away. There's something. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and I found this community of youths that were my age. because up until that time, I always thought of the Rastafarian culture as being something that the older folks would be a part of. And so it wasn't cool. I didn't see any influence at my age that would, even though I knew all about it, I always found I was the one explaining it to my friends. But when I found this community of youths my age that were constantly like coming together, constantly doing community work, constantly like keeping each other accountable and encouraging each other. And we'd meet several times a week and just like good vibes, just kind of the way that you would meet your friends in China. Yeah. And then I cut my hair off and started to grow my dreads. And I really dug really deep into the Rastafarian culture. And it was the happiest, healthiest, and most well-read I've ever been in the past 10 years.
Wow. And this was in the last 10 years that this has happened. Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
It was the healthiest, happiest, and most well-read. And that's I say that very specifically because a lot of people look at Rastafarians as if they might not be too bright.
Yeah, right. Well,
and they look a little harder. They look a little rough around the edges. But the sweetest people I know are Rastafarian people.
Wow, that's so interesting. And are you finding a Rastafarian community around? Like
here? Not so much. I meet people one-off situations. Like last week, I traveled to Montreal. Yeah. And I was there for work. And of course, my friend Kelly Bonin comes in. She runs the One Love radio station over there in Montreal. And she came and showed me a great time with her family. And they would say grounding. So we grounded together, like had a vibe. And yeah.
Oh, and that's amazing. So that's amazing.
One-off situations. But I have not found that community.
Right.
And that's probably an indication that I should become
that
community.
Yeah, it may be. I mean, it's interesting because, as you said, like I do think people have a yearning for that. Yeah. People, well, not everybody, but many people have a yearning for a spiritual community that they feel comfortable, not judged, inclusive. Yeah. And a lot of people don't find that in their lives. They look for it and they don't know really where to look.
Especially now post-COVID, where loneliness is a thing.
That's right.
And people want community. People want to be a part of something greater than themselves.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what that has done for you.
Oh, yes.
That's
yes.
Beautiful.
I went into Rastafarian, the practicing of Rastafari, because I always knew.
And so what does the practice look like? Are there kind of daily routine practices? Is prayer involved? Is meditation? Like what are some of the kind of practices?
So as a practicing 12 tribes of Israel. Yep. So as you know, there are 3 mansions. Okay. So they're kind of like, let's call them denominations for want of a better word, because they're not denominations. The 12 tribes of Israel would be the same sect of Rastafarian that my dad belongs to and that Bob Marley belongs to. So they're probably the more popular ones. Yeah. And they do 1 chapter a day of the Bible. Okay. You cannot have an opinion on the Bible if you haven't read it like you do other books. So we start from the beginning, Genesis 1, and we do 1 chapter a day all the way to the end of the Bible. And then that helps you to form an opinion. Peter Tosh says that when you read the Bible like that, it reveals to you things that otherwise you would not get if someone just advised you to let's turn to Romans. Yeah. And you're not looking at it through the lens of Christianity. So you're looking at it just as a book that you're approaching to learn something. And so I found that really helpful. In terms of physically, there's and also in the way you present yourself in your community, you're not supposed to have meat or, so it's a vegan lifestyle, purity.
Wow. You
want to make sure that you maintain, so you're not drinking any beer, you're not, you're honoring your temple.
Yeah.
And outside of that, to the way that you deal with your friends, the Rastafarians have I and I.
Yeah.
You might hear this before. Yeah. And I and I means that we're all a part of the collective oneness of the world. So you and I are from the same source. Mm-hmm. And so whatever I do to you, I'm doing to myself. And so that principle in itself just allows you to interface with people in a very different way because you're always cognizant that they are a part of you and you're a part of them.
Yeah.
And those are 3 core ones. I could go on for a little while.
Those cores are game changers.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have these words that become sayings, that become things that you hear so much that they forget that they have a core, that they have a really, like I and I.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
a fundamental relationship difference.
Yeah.
It's not just a saying. It's not.
No.
It sounds great, and we hear it a lot, but until you actually dig in and realize that actually it's about a total change in how we relate to one another. It's super interesting.
It is.
I found that really interesting, just generally in breaking down some religious language that had been carried on for so long by institutions.
Yeah.
That it kind of loses its intent.
Yes. Oh,
and often
totally.
the intent is a beautiful intent.
Yes. And it's gone.
And transformative.
Yeah.
You know?
It just becomes routine and the meaning is all lost. But I is one of those concepts that will always go with me because I will say Rastafarian culture helps you to rid yourself of ego or as much of it as you can.
It seems like a faith tradition at its best works towards that.
Absolutely.
Almost all of them, which is move towards unity away from self-centeredness. It's like that is the direction of any deep faith tradition. There's always different versions of it.
Yep.
And there's always a self-centered version of it.
Yeah.
But at its core, what most faith traditions push us towards is away from self-centeredness towards realizing that we are
a community.
We're unified.
Yes.
And there's so many factors that work against that.
Every day in our life, from consumerism and capitalism to just our ego and just how we've been socialized to put ourselves first and self-importance, and it's all false. They're all facades. The truth is that we're all in this together, and it doesn't matter how small the thing that you do is, it has a big impact, whether directly or indirectly.
Yeah. And it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Yeah. And I'm learning too, right?
Oh, yeah, we're all learning, but that's what I find so fascinating about it, because I'm sorry to just go into all the spiritual stuff, but I find it so fascinating too, because I'm really into it. But I do find it interesting because it's one of those things that the reason it becomes a daily practice often for people is because it's difficult.
Yes.
It's because power, authority, is we seem so hardwired at times to want to have advantage.
Yes.
We think about advantage.
Yes. And it's
insatiable.
insatiable.
How do I get this? It's exactly.
It's insatiable.
And sometimes, culture will reinforce that instinct.
Yeah. Yeah.
For a little while. You'll get the sense, oh yeah, this works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Being like this with other people, oh yeah, this is good. Look, I'm getting more gigs. I'm getting more money. So it doesn't last.
No.
That's, as you said, it's a facade. It's fake.
It is. It is.
But it's so hard that you kind of have to do it over and remind yourself
every day, and you will fail. I fail so many times. I'm not, since moving to Canada, I've managed to maintain a lot of my practices in terms of my connection to the Rastafarian culture, but the honest truth is that without the community, kind of like it's not as strong. I'm not held as accountable as I am by my peers. You know what I mean? I'm eating chicken or no, I'm telling you the truth because it is the truth. Yeah. But I do know what the impact is of being the best version of myself.
Right. Yeah.
And it was Rastafarian culture that brought me there.
That's so beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. And so now you're here. You've been here for how many years? And you lived 6 years. Wow, yes. You've done a lot in 6 years.
6 years.
Good for you.
Thank you.
6 years, that's not easy, moving to a completely different spot and building a career in 6 years, as well as another career.
Yeah, because I work as a project manager at a tech company.
That's the best. That's so awesome. So how did it feel when you first landed here? Did you say to yourself, I'm going to get a band? Like, did you say, or were you like, listen, music's going to be a sideline? Like, how did that evolve? How did your music career evolve since landing in Canada?
It's such a funny story. When I landed, as in, the landing paper, stamp.
Yeah.
When I landed here in 2015, yeah, I had just maybe a week prior to flying here auditioned to become one of the permanent background vocalists for Damien Jr. Gong Marley.
Oh, wow.
The week before. And I was like, I plan to move to Canada like next week. And then his team was like, if he decides that you're the person to go on, they'll fly you from wherever you are. So I came here when I landed, that's what I had my fingers crossed for. I was like, yes, I'm going to move to a new country, but I don't have to worry about trying to find a job, trying to build it up. I'll have this super great gig and I'll be in and out touring. And that was the plan.
Okay.
I was not successful.
Okay.
And I was like, well, wah, wah, wah. But you know, you move on. And so I got a job in HR at Shanix, and I was like, so what happens to the music? And in comes Dub Cartel.
Okay.
Enters from stage left and changes my life. First stage they put me on, Evolve.
Yeah, great place.
I know, right? Wild.
Totally.
And I had such a fun time. Still wasn't sure because Evolve was different. I hadn't been to any festivals kind of like that for an extended time. I had toured and been to festivals, but I stayed the whole time. And Evolve is really fun.
Super fun. I mean, Evolve is, for sure. I mean, Evolve was sustained by New Brunswick as much by Nova Scotia. So many New Brunswickers would go.
Oh, it's so good.
You know.
And then, so that being the start of our relationship together, the Dub Cartel guys was like, we should keep her around, you know. She's also Jamaican and, you know, she can sing. So they started taking me around, and I have to give them credit. Those guys never left me out. And a lot of the people that I met in the reggae pop music community in the Maritimes, I met through them. For example, the first time I came to Fredericton, this is my second time, I came with those guys.
Okay.
So they really did their job to help me to not only be comfortable on these stages, but also to be like, oh, I've been to Fredericton, I met such and so, you know? And the same way the Dunn family has been super helpful in that way as well. I had no intentions of starting my band. I did not. I started off a little bit of a jam thing with some NSCC students. We called it Melodora and didn't go very far. But then a guy, Teddy Skiffington, he was the drummer of the Dub Cartel, and he called me and he's like, the Dub Cartel is broken up now, so would you like to jam some of your stuff? And I'm like, sure, where would we do it? And who else? Well, I have the guitarist, he's here, Adrian. But like, what else? And he's like, don't worry, just, are you available on Sunday? And Teddy, and I tell him every time, I was like, Teddy, remember when you called me for that jam? And that jam that Teddy suggested has now become what is my musical family and my cushion and my band here. And without them, I wouldn't have known where to start. Maybe I would have, but I'm so grateful for them. There's Jah'Mila and there's me. But you know why I'm so confident, David? Because I know who's standing behind me. They all have my back.
Yeah.
And it's I'm grateful for that.
So beautiful. Having a band that cares.
Oh, tell me about it. And people are talking to me about appropriations. I'm like, okay, guys, let's just go to Jamaica. And if they don't have a problem, then we'll just tell everyone to just like...
cool.
Buzz off.
Right. Good. Yeah. And you did take a crew of musicians, right?
They all came
Alec
with us.
came down. I know Alec pretty well from we used to drink coffee together often in the morning, so we'd catch up. And I remember when he went down and told me all about that trip.
Oh.
So you brought a group of musicians down to Jamaica.
Well, they kind of brought themselves, but if you know what I mean, we arranged it together and we traveled together, and it was very eye-opening. We had an opportunity to record at Tough Gong Studio. It was Bob Marley's studio. We played for the Ministry of Culture there, like at one of their big shows that they put in the town square. Bunch of white guys and myself, and but they're not just a bunch of white guys. They're my musical family, and in a time when I wanted that support, I didn't have to ask them to show up.
Yeah, right.
And that is very important.
And they are deep into the music. They don't take it lightly.
No, they love reggae music, and when I think about the issue of appropriation, I think respect versus gimmickry. Mm-hmm. And I've seen lots of even TV stuff, the cartoons, where the culture is presented in a sort of gimmicky sort of way. You know, you must know what I'm talking about.
Exactly what you're
and then they
about.
Laugh, and I'm like, well, I don't quite appreciate that because it's serious. But when I see a group of musicians, or not only musicians, whoever it is, and they dedicate the time to know what it is, it's all about, find out the background of it. Who are the people who are responsible for it? You know, when I met Alec asked me, oh, where's your dad's, whatever year Strat? Dude, he has like 25 guitars.
Yeah.
Alec knows the guitars.
Yeah. No,
That's
Alec
respect.
knows. Yeah. Alec knows. He knows reggae better than really most people anywhere.
Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, absolutely.
And so now Alec is one of my dad's like best friends now. So every time I talk to my dad, he's like, "So where is Alec?"
That's cool.
So I'm really, really grateful for these guys, and I would not be able to do it without them. So to your question, did I start a reggae band? Not so much. It organically came to be.
Beautiful. Oh, that's amazing. And now you're writing.
Yes.
So I mean, when you have your own band, all of a sudden it's like, okay,
Next step.
yeah, next step. You're from backup singer to front, front of the band.
Yes.
And now you're writing. How does the writing feel?
It feels really good. I had always written, but as with every piece of creative thing or person, I think we all kind of like have a little bit of self-doubt. It's like, well, is it good enough to share?
Of course.
But these guys make it comfortable. I'm like, oh, well, I wrote this thing, like laugh if you must, but I'm going to sing it for you.
That's how you do it. But then you do it, and then you perform it, and then you see how it feels for you.
Oh, yes.
And then you start to know what's working and what's not.
Oh,
You know what, from your set, what I liked about it is that you were going from covers to originals, and the vibe was solid right through, which is incredibly hard.
Thank you.
It's super, super hard. Most people can't do that, right? Because when you're playing a cover, you're playing a perfect song. Often you've chosen a song that was written by someone else because it's killing.
Yes.
And then you're singing your own song, and if you can make the match, that means it's working. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially if you're working to a club of people who are dancing.
Yes.
You know, if you start singing a song and the vibe changes, especially when people are moving,
Yes.
and they stop moving,
You're
or
like,
they're looking.
"Ugh."
Exactly. It's cruel. It's crazy.
You know who the cruelest people are in the world? High school students.
Yeah, they are.
Thursday, just this past Thursday. I don't want to date your show, so I'm going to give the date. It was May 5th, May 5th, 2022. I played for the Prince Andrew High School. And no, you have to remember, I've played all these stages. And this was the most nervous I'd been, because I'll tell you something. When kids don't like you, they really don't. And they're not afraid to tell you they don't like you.
And how'd it go?
I'm coming to tell you. I saw myself backstage like, oh, Jah, please make this go well, please. So I go on stage, and first thing I did was I asked for a school shirt. I was like, I want to connect with them. Can I get a school shirt? So they gave me a school shirt. So I wore a jacket, and I was like, hey, guys, you know what? I'm super proud to be an honorary Prince Andrew High School student with you guys. And they were like, yeah.
There you go.
I was like, okay, now if I sing good.
You're smart.
It was incredible.
Yeah, great.
The kids came up on stage at the end of the show this past Thursday. There were at least 30, 40 kids asking us for autographs.
Wow.
They had never heard our songs on the radio. So in my head, I'm like, the kids want the trap music. The kids want the rap, like the pop stuff. They're not going to understand about Rastafari and culture. They're not going to understand that I'm talking about love and unity. I was thinking that they would think my music was uncool. And they gave me more love than the adults.
Yeah. Well, that's their full. There's no filter.
No.
That's the thing. And so it's terrifying. The other thing is, I think we're scared of high school students. You know what I mean? Like, I know I've it's funny because you mentioned that. I say that, like, the worst, I had this problem for a number of years where I would get hives on my face when I was I got really sick, and I didn't know what was going on, and I was getting facial hives. I've talked about it on the show with other people. I've just started talking about it publicly because it was so weird.
Yeah.
But during this phase, and I was on tour in Ontario, I had one day where I woke up and my bottom lip had absolutely exploded. Like, so I had a giant swollen face.
Wow.
And I couldn't get out of the gig. I called, and they were like, oh, no, everybody's set up. And I was like, oh, my goodness. So, like, I'm all of a sudden doing a high school gig, which is already terrifying for me. And I'm like, look at me. I'm like skinny, nerdy dude playing guitar and with my band. And all of a sudden, I have a giant facial hive. I have to do the whole show. I literally got in the van after this show, and I said to the van, I was like, that might have been the most courageous thing I've ever done in my life.
I know.
Like, I was like, that was as hard as it's ever been. Like, I was literally I was in front of this audience that I was already scared of in a certain way because of what you were talking about. Because you don't know. If they don't like something, you can tell when they check out. And so you're doing all those things and you're keeping it, but at the same time, I'm struggling physically. I'm sick, basically, and I have this crazy facial hive. I got through it. It actually went pretty well, but it was like when you, it almost like brought this moment back to me too, where I was like,
a little trauma.
High school gigs are tough. But if you can win them over, it's a beautiful thing. So, I mean, that's skill, though. That's because you've done a lot of gigs. You know how to connect.
Well, this is the first high school one I've done. And I was really, really grateful for the feedback. And I asked for one thing from the administration. I was like, okay, I want to grow with these guys. For one, because they've shown me so much love. And two, I know they love me, so it could be my training ground for other situations like this. I'd be like, hey guys, tell me the truth. What should I do better? Get feedback from these guys.
Wow.
So I spoke with them. I was like, if you want to bring me back next year, let's grow with them. So when I speak to one of them that I would have possibly given an autograph to, I could be like, well, I met you in the ninth grade and now you're graduating.
Oh, that's cool.
So I don't know where that will go, but I'm really hoping that
testing
happens.
ground. I mean, so it goes back a bit to what you were talking about before, that if you got up there and did something that wasn't you, because you were guessing, right? Like we've all been in that situation. You go to a high school and you're like, these kids like this, these kids are into this. We're making assumptions, constantly making assumptions about them. Again, kind of limiting who they are to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And then in response, we change to fit what we think they want. Yes. And that's when it doesn't work.
That's true.
Right? Like it will never, because they see through that more than anything. They're just trying to see people who are real. Yeah. They see enough fake stuff. You know what I mean? And so, I've thought about that too. Like the worst thing I could do was try to go up and do something I'm not. Well, the reality is this is who I am.
Exactly.
I've always been some version of this, some sort of band nerd that just adores music and tries to be really enthusiastic. And sometimes enthusiasm is nerdy. And I'm like, that's who I've been since I was a kid.
Oh, well.
Because if I try to come on and I'm like, I try to go like tough guy or rock it, it's like, they'll see that. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to sustain it.
Of course.
So that's pretty rad. That's cool.
Right. Yeah.
And so what are the plans on the recording front? Okay. You've been recording.
We have been recording, and we have the album.
Oh, wow.
The album is there.
Cool.
It's just the release. So the plan was to release it end of last year, but the Omicron thing, I wanted to have a launch and everything keeps pushing it back. Then last year I got a little distracted, but it's good distraction, I promise.
Yeah.
Our team was working with the National Arts Center in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And we worked with the National Arts Center Orchestra as well, under the leadership of Daniel Bartholomew Poyser. Yeah. And together we designed a roots reggae educational program available for free to all Canadian students between grades 4 and grades 8. I'm talking about a full thing, pedagogical guide, everything, video performances, everything. It's hosted on a website. Just go to the NAC, tell your teachers.
Wow.
It was launched.
I knew you were doing that. I didn't realize it was a full pedagogical program. I thought it was just a concert.
6 modules.
Oh, wow. And Daniel is fab. We worked together. We did a concert together a few years ago in Halifax and he's so special.
Daniel has been a driving force in my career as it relates to my orchestral relationships, which are getting better. I'm so happy. I never knew when I was growing up that I would be able to sing with 55 musicians on stage. 55 guys.
Yeah,
5. And now Daniel and the NAC made that possible for me. Eric Mattis from the Symphony Nova Scotia made it possible for me to do one of, I think, my magnum opus show was that Nina Simone the other day.
I heard it was unbelievable. It must have been so much work.
3 months I listened to those songs every day. 3 months. Because I was like, I am going to become Nina. Because you know what the truth is? I wanted to nail that so that even her estate heard about it. I was like,
yeah.
I was pushing it because I resonate so much with Nina Simone and her place at that time. You know, a rougher, stronger sort of a persona. Not in those days you were talking about the Etta James and the Billie Holidays and the Sarah Vaughan, just like way more palatable, femininely palatable than Nina Simone. And she's a freedom fighter way before her time. And but yet still also misunderstood because she battled with so much mental health stuff. And yeah, I just wanted to do her justice. I really love her as an artist. She's one of my favorite artists in the entire world. And this was my opportunity to give something back. And I took it on as a big thing.
It is a big thing. I mean, there's no... Nina Simone is a unique voice in the history of music.
Yeah.
That's what I find so amazing, right?
Yeah.
Is that this is everything about her is extraordinarily one of one.
Yeah.
Her background in classical music, how she, technically the way she played was kind of based in a classical kind of upbringing, but then obviously she had so much fluidity jazz wise, and then it exploded into this completely different expression,
of course,
of resistance and of independence.
Yep.
And it's so powerful to watch.
So powerful. And it defies genres. It defies genres. It defies all the labels, gender. It defies race. It defies it, because her music is universal.
Yeah, it cuts super, super hard through all of these things because of its uniqueness and because of its power. As speaking of, when you're talking about trying to enter your soul, what it's speaking, when you listen to her, you're like, you feel like you're getting it right from the source.
Yes.
It's right from unfiltered.
Unfiltered.
So it at times it is almost, you can almost be taken aback by its power.
Of course.
Often.
Of course.
You're going, and it scared people.
Yes.
It scared people, scared white people.
It did.
Scared white people a lot.
Scared some black people too.
Right. Right.
They're like,
but it's an amazing. Summer Soul. Have you watched that Questlove documentary that he put out recently?
I have not. No.
Holy smokes,
I'll have to watch it.
It's amazing.
But I did watch the documentary, What Happened, Miss Nina.
I saw that too.
Yeah. Done by her daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that one was really good. Watched a bunch of interviews too.
That's just amazing that you took that on. Oh. And so how do you feel now playing with an orchestra? You feel comfortable? And
yes.
That's beautiful.
I started off in 2019 when they just invited me to do one song as a part of their Black Vibes. In February they have like a Black History sort of showcase. So I joined in with Rini and all those guys.
Beautiful.
And I love those guys. But then they were like, ooh, we might like you. Come back and do a reggae show. And we did one. And even watching that one back, I'm wearing my little dress and my little red jacket. And I could see how green I was. And then I watched the NAC. And I'm like, look at you grow.
There you go.
And then I watched the Nina. I'm like, yeah.
That's so good.
You're doing it.
So well. That's so great. I mean, first, it's so wonderful that there's people like Daniel, people like Eric, who are making those connections and bridging that, because it's a different world to sing in, to play in. I've done it too, and it's not easy. I remember the first rehearsal. I came home and I basically cried. I was like, "This is terrible."
It is terrifying.
I was like, "I can't. I'm not moving at the same time they are. I feel like I'm on a ship that is traveling at a different speed than I am. I felt lost."
Yes.
And then, but it's about relationship with the conductor, whomever you have, and it's also about, you start to kind of fall into their world a little bit. You become more comfortable with who. I don't know. It's been a very interesting, and I was lucky enough to sing with I only did a couple songs with the NAC Orchestra, and I thought it was unbelievable. It was so exciting. They're so good. It was insane. But again, it was that feeling like over time where I became more comfortable. I didn't feel like I needed to force everything. We could groove together. We could groove together. The groove was different than I was used to. It was going to be different. But I was used to pushing stuff. I was like at that, especially when I first started, I was used to playing like almost bluegrass, like, and that orchestra, it moves different.
Way different.
Yes. And so to be able to sit back and get in that, it takes a long time.
David,
it takes a long time.
I love what you just said. Now add a layer of I can't read music onto that. Everything I sing with all these orchestras is by ear. Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
So at first it terrified me. And then Daniel said, "You're incredible." And I'm like, "No, there's all these opera singers. Come on." And then he's like, "You're incredible because you must be the only singer I've ever performed with that sings everything on it by ear without missing a beat, without using lyrics, without reading anything.
Yeah, amazing.
And I'm like, that's special? I didn't know. I'm like, well, how else is it done?
Yeah. Well, that's how you've been doing it since you were a
My
kid.
whole time.
But that's it, right? Like that. I think that might go back to the very beginning, which is the difference between how you approach music. I just spoke with music teachers yesterday morning.
Yeah.
And I was really I was talking about how important it is what they do. Music teachers are my favorite. I have such a huge place for music teachers because they do such important work.
Yeah.
But I talked about so much about that idea that often our most musical kids are not the ones who have done formal music training. Mm-hmm. And so if we have music programs in schools that exclude those who have learned in other ways, mm-hmm. whether it be by making hip hop at home or doesn't matter what music they're making. Mm-hmm. But if we stick to this traditional idea of what it means that you got to be able to read music or you are limiting your possibilities and you're excluding
incredibly talented
often the most talented people, the most gifted people, and anybody who might even have a shot but feel intimidated by the rules. It's like, oh, well, I got to know this. I got to know this. I remember with jazz, that's how I always felt. I felt like I had to, like it was some sort of academic pursuit.
Exactly.
Right? It's not an academic pursuit.
Feels intimidating.
It's not an academic pursuit.
Yeah.
This is different. It's a creative pursuit. It's a spiritual pursuit. It's a different thing. But sometimes we treat it like an academic pursuit, and it's so limiting. Yeah. And so I love that. I love that. That's where orchestras. That's why the Daniels and there's so many people like that.
Oh yes.
They understand that, and then all of a sudden, and then we get to experience what that world feels like, and how accomplished those people are, and how they've spent 6-7 hours in a practice room every single day going to,
right.
And you're like, that's discipline.
Okay. They asked me that question. They're like, how do you feel singing with an orchestra? And I'm like, well, I'm forced to take my creativity and my discipline way more seriously because there's a certain level of organization and focus here that is unmatched in any other musical sphere that I've been a part of.
Hard to just add a bar.
You can't know. Like Holly Matheson. I love Holly Matheson. Holly, I love you. Holly's the new conductor. Well, not new anymore. Yeah. But the conductor of the. Incredible.
Great.
Incredible. And I was like, we had a meeting, and I was so you don't read music, eh? And I was like, no, but I promise you, Holly, I'll sing it exactly like Nina.
Oh, beautiful.
I was like, and she's like, okay. And at the end, she's like, yeah, you did it. You nailed it. It was really, really powerful for me to work with Holly as a female orchestral director. Again, pushing the bars on what is conceived to be normal.
Yes, yeah.
And then to add another layer of awesomeness to that, Holly was with child.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's still, and it's it's not a secret. And I'm like, incredible feminine energy on the stage tonight. And that means so much to me. So much to me. That's for the Nina Simone show.
Wow.
And I'm like, yes. Like, we're running this.
Yeah.
And then most of the musicians, of course, are male. And then Holly Arsenault, pardon me. Holly Arsenault on keys.
Oh, yeah.
So you're looking at three
wicked.
With the key three positions there. And I felt like that.
At the front of the stage
of a big
stage. Orchestra. Yeah,
that meant so much to me. That meant as I'm working on my power as a woman, to push the bars on what is normal for us. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
You've got so many beautiful things ahead of you.
Thank you so much.
I'm really, really excited. I'm glad we got a chance to chat now.
I know.
Because I know that the next few years are going to be just big.
You
big
think?
For you. I know. I just feel it. I saw the show, and it's such a good show.
Thank you.
And I can't wait for more people to experience your gift.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for everything that you do, and thanks for being here.
Oh, for sure. You know what I'm excited about? I think we're going to collaborate in September.
We definitely
and
are.
I'm excited.
We definitely are. We're going to be on stage in front of that orchestra.
Yes.
So it's going to be, I'm so glad you said yes. I appreciate that so much.
Anytime.
So, right on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.